Hey guys, Paul Lynn here. Want to talk to you today about a really common fitness topic that, as much as you hear about it, most people don't seem to really grasp it. And that is warming up before you train and cooling down after you train. Is it necessary? When is it necessary? What does it consist of? Should you stretch or not stretch? And all these different questions. I want to give you the lowdown on that so that one, you're not wasting a lot of time and energy, but two, you're also not endangering your health or risking injury, okay? So first of all, let's start backwards and let's talk about cool down first. What is it? Why is it important? The body is a machine, and like any machine, shock is something that's bad for it. It can cause a lot of problems. With your body, you don't want to go from a state of very low activity to an instant state of super high activity. We all know instinctively, yeah, that seems like a pretty bad idea. Likewise, going from super high intensity down to absolute zero is just as dangerous for the heart, for the nervous system, for the muscles. It's not something you do. So when do you need to cool down? When I talk about cooling down, I want you to think almost exclusively about your heart, okay? If you're lifting weights and your heart rate is a little bit elevated and then it goes down in between sets and then it spikes up a little bit while you're actually lifting and then it drops back down, you're not getting into a super high heart rate zone. You're not up in, if you know heart rate zones, you're not up in like zone 5 or zone 4, up near, your heart beating as fast as it possibly can. Rather, you're getting a little bit elevated. Maybe you take a few deep breaths for a minute or two, and then you calm back down and you feel relaxed, and maybe you've got just a little tiny bit of sweat going, but you're not sustaining a state of high cardio activity. You see the difference? If you're out running some sprints, right? You go to the local track or even out in the street in front of your house and you run 100 meters, then you cool off for a few minutes, then you run 100 meters, cool off for a few minutes. How much do you really need to cool down after you do 10, 20 of those sprints? Well, your heart rate went up, but it wasn't up long enough to go super high. And then once you stopped, it dropped right back down again. You didn't sustain that high state for very long, right? So your body didn't kind of lock into that state and it didn't really adjust to it. It was in a constantly dynamic state of up and down, up and down. Do you really need to cool off after this workout? Well, here's the question. In between those sprints, did you relax completely and calm all the way back down? Or were you still gasping for air when you started the next one? Okay? If you were still pretty wound up when you started your next sprint, then you were kind of doing HIIT training rather than just, doing casual sprints. So if your heart was high the whole time and you were gasping for breath the whole time, you need to cool down. Whereas if you were doing those same sprints but taking long enough in between them that you cooled down enough that you could say a complete sentence without having to stop and take a break in the middle of it. You see what I'm saying? If you could, get a whole sentence out without stopping to breathe, you were relaxed before you started your next one. Do you need to cool down in that case? You really don't. You weren't in a sustained high state. But you go out for a 30-minute run. Now, I'm not talking about a nice, casual little jog in the neighborhood with your little teacup poodle, chihuahua, right there next to you and not even breaking a sweat keeping up. 30 minutes of that, and you can basically just go down to walking, walk for 2 or 3 minutes, and that is about all the real cool down your body cares to have or needs. But if you're out there in heart rate zone 4, and if you don't know heart rate zones and you don't have like a watch or a heart rate strap that, can give you that readout, just think about this. If you're out there gasping for air, or, something like that, you're probably up in zone 4 or zone 5. And if you're there for 20 minutes or more, then yes, you definitely need to cool down. What do I mean by cool down? Let's pretend that heart rate is up and it's at about 170 beats per minute. That's different for everybody. What constitutes a high heart rate for you might be very different than a high heart rate for me. So don't take the number 170 or 175 to mean anything. It doesn't. If you're curious to know what's important for you, calculate your own heart rate zones or focus on the breathing. If you're breathing like I showed you a minute ago, then it doesn't matter what number your heart actually is. The fact is, it's high for you. And if you're sustaining that for 20 minutes or more, your body is kind of locking into that state, right? And you do not want to go from there to, okay, beep, 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 my run's done. Oh, I'm so tired. And then you just lay down on the sidewalk and say, I'm just going to lay here for a little bit and take a break. Do that. That's stupid, okay? First of all, that's just really stupid. If you're doing that, you're either uninformed, or if you have been informed already and you're still doing that, it's because you're stupid, okay? I'm not going to mince words here. Don't do that to your heart. Don't do that to your nervous system. If you're trying to kill yourself, then sure, do something like that. That's actually a pretty quick way to do it a lot of times. If you're sustaining a high intensity level of cardio, you don't want that heart rate going from 175, trying to drop it all the way down to 60. Because what happens? That heart rate's beating real fast. It's pumping a lot of blood because your muscles are demanding all of this energy. They need all this oxygen. They need all this sugar. And your body's having to move fat and take it to be processed as energy and then deliver that to the muscles and move all the water and the oxygen around to facilitate all those chemical reactions. Yes, your heart rate is beating 175, and it's good because all of your body needs that level of circulation. And because of all the things moving through the blood barrier, the pressure is actually really low, even though your heart rate's high. Now, all of a sudden, you just stop cold. And what happens? The heart's still pumping, and all of a sudden, the muscles shut down and say, ooh, we don't need any more energy. We're not being used anymore. We're done. And the heart's still going like, what? Generating all this pressure, trying to move all this stuff around, and now you've got a blockage in the system because the muscles say, nah, we don't need it anymore. What happens? You see what I'm saying? There's all kinds of pressure, there's all kind of tendency in the body that now you've just slammed the brakes on. It's real easy for something to break when you do that to the body. So instead, you want to slow it down gradually. You're running at that high pace. Okay, your run just finished. Great. Maybe slow it down and okay, now I'm going to walk. I just need to walk for 30 seconds just to catch my breath. Okay, so walk for no more than maybe 30 seconds. But after that 30 seconds, at least get back up to a nice jog and keep going at that speed until your heart rate comes down about, let's say, 20 beats per minute or something like that. And then once you see that, you start to feel, okay, I'm breathing a little bit better. Slow it down one more level. I'm not going to say cool down for 5 minutes. Different people, have different levels of cardiovascular health, and they need different amounts of time to cool down. Some people can genuinely cool down gradually, stage by stage in 3 minutes and they're done. Other people take 7 or 8 minutes to really cool down from the same level of exertion. I can't tell you what's right for you, but what I can tell you is you need to go down step by step. Get down a little bit, sustain it for a minute or two, get down a little bit more, sustain it for a minute or two. Now get down to something that's barely above normal. You should end up walking and walking for a few minutes until you're basically back to that point where you can have a normal conversation. You're not huffing and puffing. You're not gasping for air. Now, okay, fine. You want to throw down in the grass and just and take a nap, you're fine to do so, okay? That's cooling down. Warming up is kind of the same concept. When you think about it, the body goes from none of the muscles are asking anything, they don't need much, and then all of a sudden you start taxing them at a super high level, and they're screaming for energy, and they're screaming for oxygen, and they're screaming for water, and the cardiovascular system is like, oh hell, and it panics and it starts trying to catch up to, feed those muscles. And yeah, bad things can happen because it can take the heart a little bit to catch up. And what happens is those muscles are already draining so much that it's quite possible that some of the resources that your brain needs to keep functioning don't get there because the muscles have taken them up and your heart rate didn't have a chance to catch up. The rest of your bodily metabolic processes didn't have time to kick in and switch over into a different energy conversion system. And things can come up short. And when you're talking about your body and your brain, bad things can happen, like you can pass out and you can have a heart attack. Just like not cooling down, you can go into shock and you can vomit, Bad things can happen when you don't cool down and you don't warm up. So other than the reasons for warming up, what else is there to say? What is warming up? And is it only for cardio? Well, unlike cooling down is really just for cardio. But warming up is for any kind of high intensity exercise, whether it's training or just exercise. If you're using your muscles and you're generating a lot of force, we're talking about weightlifting here, right? Then, if you're doing very light loads, like right now, I'm in a phase of my training. I do periodized training, and for the next few months, I'm going to be working at like 50% of my max. So really low weight. Do I warm up if I'm only going to be training at 50%? I won't lie. I do not warm up at 50%. Usually, when I'm lifting heavy, I start my warm up with about 40% of the weight that I'm going to be, lifting. And, 40%, if I'm training at 50% and I'm even doing low reps, in my mind, it's just not even worth it. But I do warm up my muscles a little bit. When you're talking about doing resistive work, it's a little bit different from cardio. So warm-up works the same as cool down. Don't go from 0 to, zone 4 or zone 5 heart rate zone when you're doing cardio. Start a little bit slow, give yourself a few minutes in that level, come up a little bit more, give yourself a couple of minutes in that level, and then get up to your actual, pace that you're trying to be at and sustain it and stay there and do your training before you cool down again. With lifting, it's a little bit different. You have exactly 2 objectives when you're warming up for resistive training. One is you need to raise your body temperature, okay? So if you're sitting here and you touch everything and you're nice and cool, by the time you get done warming up, you touch everything, it should feel a little bit warmer, okay? That's why it's called warming up. You want to raise the temperature of your body. That means your metabolism's been stimulated. That means your heart is already engaged. That means your metabolic processes are already active and you're ready to start providing energy. And the second thing, the second objective of warming up for doing resistive work is you want to gradually acclimate the muscles to the workload. What does that mean? Let's pretend that I'm bench pressing and my maximum bench press is about 260 pounds, right? And I'm going to be training not at the full 260, obviously, but I'm going to be training in the neighborhood. So I might be training around 220 pounds, right? Well, I am not going to get off. I usually do elliptical for 10 minutes to get that body temperature up before I lift. And then I get off of there and I start lifting. Well, I'm not going to jump right into 220 pounds loaded on the bar, get under it, and start pushing it. If I do, I can guarantee it's only a matter of time I'm going to injure my muscles. I'm going to pull a pec or something like that, right? No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load that bar up with something like 150 pounds. And I'm not going to sit there and do a full set because I'm not trying to wear myself out. I'm probably going to do 2 or 4 reps and drop it. And then I might do that one more time and drop it. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put about 180 pounds on there. And I'm going to only do probably about 2 reps and then drop it. Come back a minute later, 2 more reps, drop it. Now I'm going to put my full 220 on there. Now I'm going to take a couple of more minutes just to really make sure that I'm not at all, like from the warm up. Now I'm going to start doing my real training. And whatever my training is, when I get done, I'm good. So that's the 2 things when you're warming up for resistive work that you want to do. 1, raise your body temperature. And 2, gradually acclimate your muscles to the workload if it's a heavy workload. If it's a light workload, like you're doing push-ups, you're doing sets of 10, but if you wanted to, you could just drop down right now and do 50 push-ups, right? And now you're just doing sets of 10 just to kind of maintain. Do you need to warm up to that? No, you do not. No, you don't. Push-ups, if you're halfway fit, are pretty easy. Warming up to that is not going to prevent anything or accomplish anything because it would be almost impossible that you're going to injure yourself doing a normal push-up if you're in fairly decent, shape and physical condition. So that's that. The last thing about warming up and cooling down is, what about stretching, right? We've been told stretching does nothing. We've been told, oh, you always stretch before activity. You've also probably heard, no, you need to stretch after your activity. Here's the lowdown on it, okay? You only stretch if that stretching is going to improve your performance, all right? So what does that mean? Stretching before activity does not prevent injury, okay? There might be some people with some rare specific injury or condition that, yes, stretching does help them prevent injury before an activity. But for the rest of us who are healthy, who don't have any specifically diagnosed condition that a doctor has specifically told us, yes, you need to stretch before you do any kind of activity. For the rest of us, no, it does not prevent injury. And furthermore, it can impede performance. So if you're like pulling, you're tugging on your muscles and stretching them, before an activity, that's going to elongate those muscles. And when the muscles are in a longer state, they're actually capable of generating less force. So if I go and bench press, let's say, I warm up a little bit, I'm ready to push. But let's pretend that after I warm up or even before I warm up, I also stretch by pulling on those muscles with force. And I put my arm against a wall and I turn into it. When I get on that bench, I'm going to notice for a fact I am weaker than I should be. I will not be able to lift the same amount of weight after I get done doing that to my muscles. So I haven't prevented injury. It didn't constitute any kind of warm-up. All I did was weaken myself. And if I weaken myself before performing an activity, well, I know what I'm usually capable of when I do this activity, and now I've weakened my muscles, so I've actually possibly made myself more prone to injury because I expect a certain level of performance out of my muscles that I've inhibited them from providing. So, now my body and my mind are out of sync, and yes, that can certainly lead to an injury, right? What about stretching after a workout? There's no reason to believe, based on any studies, that stretching after a workout promotes long-term flexibility, prevents muscular tension, releases cortisol from your muscles after you lift weights, helps your muscles recover and helps them grow after a workout. Those are the myths. Those are the things that people say in the gym. That's kind of bro wisdom, but it's not science wisdom. So here's the thing. Let's pretend you like stretching and you want to stretch for flexibility or whatever reason. If you're going to stretch, probably do all that stuff after the activity, okay? There are some stretches that help for some activities. For instance, if you're about to run, being able to open your legs to the front and back is really important for your speed, right? So in that case, do some, stretching in that area. Don't do your long, stretching, static stretching where you're forcing the muscles open and, that is going to elongate and weaken the muscles. But if you want to pull the knees up on their own strength and hold them up for a few seconds, and the same thing, get down on all fours and pull the leg back on its own strength so that you're not like having someone pull on it or something like that. That is going to help open up that range without weakening the muscle. But if you're pulling on it and forcing it before your activity, all you're doing is lowering your performance. After the workout's over, now, if you want to stretch, all bets are off. Feel free to do any kind of stretching you want. After the workout's done, if you needed to do a cool down, obviously after the cool down. Get the work done, get the performance done, and as your last physical endeavor of the day, if you're going to stretch, that's when to do it, okay? So that's it. That's what I've got for you. I hope you find it useful. I hope it helps you in the future have better, smarter workouts. I don't want you getting injured. I don't want you having a bad time. I don't want you burning out. I want fitness to be a part of your life because once you really get into the groove, it's amazing and it feels fantastic. But yeah, if you think, oh man, I've got to spend all this time doing this, doing that, and in the end it's not beneficial or it's not going to help you in any way, I want to be the one to set you straight and get you on a better path. So that's it. That's what I've got for you today. If you like what I'm doing, subscribe to the channel. Keep getting more of it. Also, don't be shy about checking out past videos, what I've already got on my channel. Trust me, even if it came out more than like a week ago, that doesn't mean it's not good and it doesn't mean it's expired and not useful anymore. You can find really good stuff in there, okay? So Thanks again for watching. You take care, and I'll be seeing you.